Okay, so this discussion is regarding the cost analysis in the production. So for the past topics already on your modular learning materials, there are already the introductions or even the discussions or analysis of the production concept. Now, in this part, okay, so the purpose actually of this discussion is to bridge the gap between the production as a purely technological relationship and the cost of producing levels of output to achieve. Meaning is we have to combine already the production concept and the different costs that are involved when it comes to the production. Costs are actually inevitable when it comes to the production process of a certain business. Uh, we all know that production is the basic activity that a certain economy has to do, because without a production, there is no such thing as income, there is no such thing as um jobs where we could actually source out our income. So in here, we will have to combine them and now see to it what actually the gap between the two of them. Okay? So in here is let's first distinguish what are the different nature or the nature of the cost. When we say nature of the cost, we are already referring to what makes the cost as a cost itself or how come there are costs itself. Okay. Now the nature of the cost, it could either be classified into three. First is we have the explicit cost. Explicit cost, these are actually the cost that a certain business incur out of their pocket. Kasi in a certain economies or a certain economies, they generally are concerned with any all costs that are relevant, okay, to the production process. So these costs are referred to as economic cost. Okay. Now, an economic cost composes of an explicit cost or an implicit cost. But remember that in a certain business, a cost function of a profit maximization firm shows the minimum cost production, or it is the minimum cost of producing various output levels given a certain market determined factor prices, and of course the firm's budget constraint. So dito ang ginagawa ng ating mga businesses is they have to minimize the cost by all the different economic costs or the total economic cost that they are incurring. Okay, so in here generally they are all concerned with the different costs. So, ang ating total economic cost, they could either be explicit or implicit cost. Ngayon, ang both explicit cost at saka implicit cost na to, both of them are considered to be opportunity cost. Why are they considered to be opportunity cost? Because they have, or this value has another use on a best alternative way. Okay? So that means meron pang gamit kahit na we already incurred a cost. Those costs that we actually incurred has a better use if we did not use it supposedly to what we had to be expended or expended. Okay? So, ang explicit cost lang is considered to be, or it is accounted as accounting cost, while economic cost is considered to be part of the implicit cost. Now, explicit costs and accounting costs, even though they are considered to be economic costs and they are considered to be both opportunity costs, what makes them different actually is their visibility. Explicit cost is considered to be visible because they are considered to be out of the pocket expenses, or they are those expenses that we have to incur on a day-to-day operation of a certain business. On the other hand, this economic cost here, the economic cost, or what we call the implicit cost, are considered to be the indirect cost. Why are they considered to be indirect costs? In the sense that they are invincible. You will never receive such a invoice if you did not make a certain out of the pocket expenses. Okay, that's why it is most probably they are considered to be the alternative or opportunity cost. Parang nabibilang sila na mas magandang maibilang sila sa opportunity cost kumpara sa explicit cost. But remember, both of them are considered to be a opportunity cost. Okay. Another one is that what is the relevant cost? Relevant costs, of course, are all the costs that are considered to be part of the economic cost. Okay, so explicit cost, or you may say that explicit cost is not included, but it is part of the relevant cost pa rin ang ating explicit cost. Now, the relevant cost could either be an incremental cost or the sunk cost which are considered to be irrelevant. Now, pag sinabi nating incremental cost, these are actually the costs that we incur on the basis of adding more resources or adding more outputs when it comes to the production process. So therefore, if we are going to add more production or more output in the production, we need more resources. So in that case, we need to spend because of what we had to add. And the expenditures already on those adding resources or adding output are considered to be the incremental costs. These are the additional costs that we have to incur. The sunk costs, on the other hand, these are considered to be sunk costs or are irrelevant in the sense that even if there are no operations, we still have to pay such kind of a cost itself. Okay? Ganyan po. Now, there are different short-run costs that are involved in the production process. And we also have a long-run cost, but most probably we are still concentrating on the short-run cost. Why so? It is because in a certain kind of business, most of them are actually operating on the short run. Regardless of how many years they're actually operating, even if it is considered 10, 5 years, or 20 years, most of them are still operating in the short run. So how do we say that these businesses who are already operating for 20 years or 10 years are considered to be in the short run? It is because as long as a certain business has to pay as such a fixed cost or a sunk cost, then that means they're still operating in the short run period. Because a sunk cost or a fixed cost, you will never pay such thing in the long run period. Because it's a long run period, everything is changeable. Everything is alterable. Okay, so what are those costs? If you're going to distinguish them into two, we have the total cost and the other one are the average costs. Now, the total cost or the totality costs, which are considered to be the total cost, the total fixed cost, and the total variable cost, these are, of course, the entire cost that we incur every time we do the operations in the production. So, the total fixed cost, of course, these are the fixed costs that we have to pay for the entire production, even if there is no operation. So that means even if the output is considered to be zero, we still have to pay a certain amount. Okay? Not like the total variable cost. If you're not going to produce a certain kind of output, you will not pay anything. So that means a total variable cost will only be incurred if there are resources that are needed in the production. Such total variable costs are considered to be the wages of the people, those costs that we pay every time that we buy our raw materials needed in the productions. Okay, and another ones are the different technological aspects that are needed when it comes to the productions. Those are still part of the variable cost. Now, the addition of this both total fixed cost and total variable cost will now compose your total cost. Now, on the other hand, is we have the average costs. The different average cost is simply a cost for per unit. Okay? Per unit yan. So, pag sinabi natin per unit, how much cost did we incur in producing one output? Okay? Out of the entire total variable cost, how much did we spend for one output? Out of the total fixed cost, how much did we spend to one output? So those are considered to be your average cost itself. Average total cost, this is considered to be the per unit cost of the output because or ito yung tinatawag natin na anong tawag natin dito? Ito yung tinatawag natin na ginagastos natin kada output mismo na nailalabas sa ating market. While the average fixed cost here, this one is out of the amount that we spend in the production that goes to the total fixed cost, how much was actually being used for one output, and that is considered to be average. Same is true with the total variable cost. Out of the entire cost that we paid for the raw materials that needed in the production, how much was actually spent for one output, and that is considered to be the average variable cost. Now again, if you're going to add both of this one, will give you your average total cost. Or simply, there are two ways to derive your average total cost. This is the first one, and then this one is the other one. Okay? Or it is just the total cost divided by the quantity or the addition of the average fixed cost and the average variable cost. Now, on the other hand, we have here the marginal cost. Okay, a marginal cost is one basis when it comes to deciding if in adding one output is it uh, does it benefit us more or does it actually give us more cost. Okay, the marginal cost could be derived by the changes in the total cost divided by the changes in your average total cost, or simply the average total variable cost divided by the uh, what you call this one, changes in your quantity output. So nevertheless, if you're going to solve for the marginal cost there, now the marginal cost could be derived by, of course, observing two variables. You can never actually solve that one if there are no two variables that are involved. Okay, there. Now, we have here, of course, the mathematical expression of your short-run cost. Okay, so how does it look like actually? So look at the table. The total fixed cost is actually a sunk cost. Will give you the same cost no matter what level of output we are going to produce. It will always be the same. Not like the total variable cost, that if this quantity here will vary, then the total variable cost also will vary. That is the reason why the total cost here, on the other hand, also varies. It is because of the total variable cost. So nevertheless, the total fixed costs do not have a big impact when it comes to the total cost, because what makes the total cost change is because of the total variable cost. Why does the total variable cost here changes? It is because your quantity here is changing. Okay? Yeah, ganyan po siya. Now, next is, we have here the different average cost. As you can see, the average cost on the production without any production will incur nothing, of course. Okay, because there are no such average costs if there is no output to be produced. But if you're going to produce more output already from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5, then the average variable cost, average fixed cost will have to vary. Now, what makes the average fixed cost and the average variable cost different are, yes, different if we're going to describe and differentiate them. The average fixed cost here will have to decrease no matter what. So that means if your quantity is increasing, the more quantity you're going to increase, pababa ng pababa ang total fixed cost. Why? It is because the fixed amount is being distributed to a greater and a greater amount. That is the reason why the average fixed costs have to decline and decline and decline. But nevertheless, it will never crosses the zero. Why? Because only an average fixed cost will cross the zero line if the quantity is zero. Kaya nga dito on the very beginning, it became zero or nothing here because the output is zero. So therefore, if you're going to continue produce that and then suddenly it will become zero, that is the time the average fixed cost will have to be zero. Okay? Average variable cost, on the other hand, will have to decline. Okay, it will again decline, but sooner or later you will see that this one, the average variable cost here, okay, it will decline, reaches a certain level of a minimum, and then increases again. It is because now on the very beginning, you need to have a smaller cost to be incurred when it comes to the production. So therefore, if you're going to distribute this one to a certain level of amount, then malaki pa rin yung differences ng mga yon. So that means a smaller value of an output with a greater level of a what we call this one, a variable cost, will now give you a higher amount. But the more that you're going to increase, bababa at bababa yan because it will be distributed. But sooner it will increase. Why so? It is because you need more resources to produce a certain output. Hindi po pwede na if you want to produce more and millions and billions of output that you do not need a certain kind of resources. That is the reason why a certain average variable cost will have to increase again. So first, it will decline, reaches a certain minimum, and then increases again. Okay, same is true with the average total cost. Why so? Again, it is because of the impact of the variable cost. Remember on the first slide that I told you that the total cost is greatly impacted by your total variable cost, not of the total fixed cost. Okay, now the marginal cost here, supposedly it is not only 1 but in between 0 and 1, in between 1 and 2, in between 2 and 3, in between 3 and 4, supposedly. Okay, that is how we are going to solve for the marginal cost, because the marginal cost is the cost in between this value. How much did we incur in adding from 0 to 1? Nasa gitna ng dalawang yon. So that is the reason why it must be written on the center itself. Okay, now looking at the marginal cost. Now the marginal cost on the very first stage of production, it declines, but on the second stage or in the latter stage of the production, it will always increase, again because of the different variable costs or the variable resources that we have to need. That is the reason we have to increase more and more additional cost. Okay, yan. So if you're going to differentiate or describe both the totality cost and then the average cost, andito po siya on the left side of the slide. We have here the total cost figure and we have here the average cost figure. Okay, now if we will go to the exact profit maximization process, we all know that profit maximization will be best at the minimum part, which will always be at these levels. But which one is the best? Uh, I'm telling you, this one will be the best rather than this one if it is on the minimum. Now, the explanation is we will deal with that with the different market structures that you're going to encounter, from the perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competitions, and then the oligopolies. Okay. Now, nevertheless, take note that in terms of doing this, or in terms of solving the different costs, is you always have to follow this processes. Okay. Now, in here, the marginal cost and the average cost, what does the W here means? It is because it is an example that our variable cost here, our variable is considered to be the labor. Now, if it is the labor, then therefore, what is the pay for the labor? The labor is being paid by a certain a certain wage or a certain salary. That is what we have to put on the numerator. What is the cost of a certain labor? It is the wage, kaya siya po yung nasa numerator. Okay? Below, which is the quantity, is the APL. Ibig sabihin, the average product per labor. How much did one labor make? Okay, yun yung ibig sabihin po ng average product of labor. Dito sa baba, it is still the same. The wage and then the denominator, which is considered to be the MPL, or the marginal product of labor. How much did one labor add to the production? Ito po yung MPL. How much did one labor make out of the total output? Ito yung APL. How much did that one labor add to the total output? That is the MPL. Okay? Ganyan po. Now, let's see the figurative relationship of the different costs here. But before that is, let's see what is the long run cost. Now, remember again, I told in the earlier one that long run cost is different from that of the short run. But on the long run, we could not find actual fixed cost. We only find a variable cost because everything in the long run is considered to be variable. Napapalitan at napapalitan lagi ang mga yan. Okay? So, most probably, we will have to focus on the long run total cost. But of course, there are considered to be the long run average cost and then the long run marginal cost. So, how are we going to solve them mathematically? It is still the same. Okay? Long run average cost is long run total cost divided by quantity, while the marginal cost is the changes in the long run total cost divided by the changes in your quantity itself. Okay? Ganyan. So, look at this relationship between the long run cost and then the short run cost. So, in the long run, we could actually find only one curve, which is considered to be the long run average cost. Wherein in the long run average cost, you could actually see different short run average cost. So these short-run average costs are considered to be operations on the different short-run period. Wherein on this different short-run average costs, we could actually pick which among them is the best stage of production. Wherein, of course, if you're going to pick, look at the minimum cost at yung pinakamababang cost sa pinakamababa rin na curve. Okay? So, in this one, this short-run average cost curve 3 is considered to be the best one because it is a cost on the lowest part, and yet there is also a minimum point that could be tangent to a certain long-run average cost. Okay? Pag naging tangent yan, pag ibig sabihin tangent, okay, it actually made a kiss to the long-run cost. Okay, so supposedly it will be like that. The long run average cost. So in that case, ito yung pinakamababa. Okay, so this will be the best stage to produce a certain kind of output. Okay, now in this, another line here, the minimum one is at this level. Andito po siya sa pinakamababa. Ito sa long run average cost, yung pinaka saddle niya, yung pinaka minimum sa saddle niya will be the best part. Pero piliin nyo doon, hindi ka basta pipili doon. Now, tignan nyo doon kung alin yung short run na pinaka minimum, yun yung point na yun. Okay, which would be this. So that's how you differentiate between the long run and then the short run period. Okay, there. So, of course, when it comes to minimizing costs internationally, kung bakit international yan, because most of the business nowadays are related to the international cases. Even small scale businesses, they are already entering into the international market. So therefore, even if you do not have a business in an international basis, now when it comes to cost analysis, you have to think of a international base. Okay, now, so in terms of how are you going to minimize cost? Now, there are different ways. Of course, first is we have foreign sourcing of inputs. Foreign sourcing of inputs this is one way of what do you call this one? Spending a certain amount to the foreign resources rather than to your own resources. Kasi if you're going to transport your own resources to that country, that will be much expensive than that of the resources that you're going to pay on that country. Okay? Another one is the new international economics of scale. Ano yung economics of scale? Pag sinabi nating economics of scale, ito yung mga factors of production that actually make an effort to double your output even if you spend. Okay? That means, kahit gastos ka ng gastos ng tigli-5 peso tuloy, tigli-5 piso, para lang makapag-produce ka ng output, okay lang yon. As long as the output is doubled compared to the cost. That is considered to be your economies of scale itself. Okay? Next is we have the immigration of skilled labor. Rather than sabi nga nila, it is good that if you're going to put up a certain business in a one foreign market, it is good because you're creating jobs for the people in there. But if you need more and more worker, wherein you spend more and more, why not make or why not hire a skilled labor, even if it is expensive, as long as it is one compared to many kind of labor itself. Kaya yun ang sinasabi nila na why do such Filipinos always go abroad? Because of their skilled. They better hire them, pay them at a greater amount rather than hiring their resources in there wherein they could not do actually their job well, and yet they're paying them more and more. Which is rather expensive compared to rather than what do you call this one, migrating those skilled laborers. And of course, the brain drain. The brain drain is wala tayong magagawa doon if we are going to be on the international market. The best way to minimize the cost is the brain drain. Rather than using your own culture in that or adapting your own culture in that country where you're going to put up your business, why not adapt their own culture so that you could minimize the cost rather than doing your own culture itself. Okay, now nevertheless, well, the best thing is minimizing cost will actually help us when it comes to supply chain management. Supply chain management in the production process is very important because it deals with what are this one, the merges and the integrates functions, which are considered to be the purchasing, transportation, warehousing, distribution, and customer services. These are the different logistics, the means to manage your own productions. And we have, of course, one logistic management, which is the source of competitive advantage. Now, if you want to manage your cost minimally and do it on a good way of management, you have to take note your different functions, such as the purchasing, and you have to make your own competitive advantage compared to the other businesses. Okay. Um, Now let's see the cost volume profit analysis in a certain business. This is the very own goal when it comes to uh, every entrepreneur who are going to put up their own business or to come up with their own business, is to come up with the cost volume profit analysis, because the cost volume profit analysis will now help them decide if they are actually earning a profit or if they are actually earning a loss. Once they reach this one, or once they have this kind of analysis, they will always make a good decision itself. Now, what is the very important in this kind of analysis is the break even. Is the break even. What is a break even? This is a situation wherein all your costs are already covered by the different sales that you made. So, zero ang profit natin dito. But do we have to earn a revenue on at this level? Of course, we earn a revenue. Only the profit is zero. Now, what makes the revenue and profit different is that the revenue is the total income of a certain business that could be used for paying the variables, that could be used on paying the wages, that could be used to paying the fixed costs. While the profit here is another income that is actually used by the owners of the company for their own dividends, or yung tinatawag natin na they could actually use them for further expansion or for further investment. That what makes the profit and the revenue uh, different. Okay, even though they're considered, both of them are considered income. Now, the break even here is at this level. Once they reach the break even, look at the decision. Now, if you reach this one, if you want to minimize the cost by decreasing your output, alam mo ang magiging result. Loss yan. So therefore, if you want to decrease or to minimize your cost, why not increase your production, earn a profit more? Okay, because at this level, you know that the total revenue is greater than the cost. So therefore, your price or the cost is still lower compared to the income that you are earning. So that is how important the cost volume analysis is, to give you a very bird's eye view on how do you decide on your own business. Okay. So of course, these are the different ways in terms of the cost volume profit analysis. Take note of the total revenue and then the total cost, and of course the break-even volume. The break-even volume is very important because this will now be your basis if you're going to increase or decrease more your production. Okay, now the break-even, the total revenue is this one, and then the total cost is this one. Okay, so therefore, in short, the break-even is derived through this. Total fixed cost divided by price minus the average variable cost. Okay. Uh, So what are the different managerial decisions in a certain business? Managerial decisions is very important. So pag kayo nandun na, you already have your cost volume analysis, you are aware already of minimizing the cost. Ngayon, you also have to make your own logistics. You are aware of the different costs, so therefore you have to make a decision. Now remember, if you want to expand and earn more in terms of business, the best way is to operate in terms of leverage. What is a leverage? It is considered to be an investment strategy. That is, what do you say with that? Is, I may say it is using a borrowed money, especially the use of various financial instruments or borrowed capital, to increase the potential return of an investment. That means if you want to increase further your production, it's either are you going to use your own money or are you going to make use of other money. Now, if you're going to use your own money, most probably you're making a very big risks, because once your business is bankrupt, you do not have any. So most probably, most of the business nowadays, they do not entirely use their own money, but they have to borrow some money through financial uh, markets. Okay, by means of that, they could use that borrowed money to increase the potential of their investments. Ba? So that is how the operation of the leverage being done. Operating leverage is, of course, you could derive them through total fixed cost divided by the variable cost. And of course, the degree of the operating leverage, meaning how much is the percentage that you're actually working onto the leverage, or how much are you going to earn more if you're going to earn, if you're going to operate on the leverage one. That is what the degree of operating leverage means. Okay, so which could be derived through this one. Okay, the first one is we have the percentage change in the profit divided by the percentage change in the uh, output. So the percentage change in the profit, the expanded expression of this one is here. It is the quantity price minus the average variable cost, while the expanded formula for the change in the quantity is, of course, the quantity times the price minus average variable cost minus the total fixed cost. Now, but if you have a table that shows exactly that, there are already fixed costs, there are already total variable costs, there are already profit that are sold, there are quantities that are being derived, then mas madali yan. Because a change in the profit will just be a profit 2 minus a profit 1 divided by 2 divided by the quantity 2 minus the quantity 1 divided by the quantity 1. Okay? So that's how you derive it. Oh, sorry, this one here must be 1. Okay? Now, at this point, multiply it by 100 and you will have already your degree of operating leverage. But if you do not have this specific values and you have the cost values, then you use already the specified formula here. Okay? So that's how you deal with your decisions. Now, in terms of this one, in terms of the degree of operating leverage, if it is the degree of operating leverage would be at a 10%, that means the capital that you borrowed can only give you a portion of 10% of it. So if you borrowed 1 million to increase further your production or to expand your business, that means if your the degree of operating leverage is 10%, out of the income na earn ng 1 million na yon is 10% lang ang pumupunta sa iyo na pwede mong gamitin for further investment. Ganun po ang ibig sabihin ng ating degree of operating leverage. Okay? So, now, for the ending part of it, is we have to distinguish the different functions that you're going to use if you are already on the maximizing profit and the minimizing cost. We have the theoretical form, which we will always use. Theoretical form kasi po, dito is that we will always incur 2 to 3 more variables. That is the reason we have to be at the second degree or third degree level, or only on the second degree level. It is because there are again many variables that are involved. Pag hindi tayo umaabot sa second degree level or third degree level, then we are only on the linear form. Linear function form, which is only applicable for elementaries and high schools. You have to use the theoretical form, but still there is still linear form that you're going to encounter on the process itself. Okay? So examples, we have the different examples when it comes to computation the cost. Here is we have the table that shows the total cost of the producing the items. We have here the different items that you're going to use from 0, 100, 200 to 300. The cost of producing these items are on the other side of the table. Okay, so notice here that we have only 300 outputs, and then the cost is reaching until 253,000. So if the question would say what is the fixed cost, the fixed cost is very easy to determine even if it is not specified in here, but by looking at the table, once your output is 0 and yet you are incurring a cost here, then automatically that is considered to be your fixed cost. Because fixed costs, as I mentioned last on the very beginning, it is considered to be a sunk cost. A sunk cost in the sense that no operations, that means no output. Why do we have to pay such an amount? Because it is a must. And that is considered to be your 20,000. Okay, so there is the answer then. Second is, when the 200 items are made, what is the total variable cost and what is the average variable cost? Of course, if the 200 output is made, we could actually define the total cost as the 45,000. There is the total cost. Okay, but what about the average variable cost? It is mentioned there the total variable cost. Total variable cost could be derived by, how do we derive your total variable cost? That is the price of that is the cost of the quantity times the output. Okay, or the cost of the quantity times the output. That is considered to be the total variable cost. Cost of the quantity times the quantity. Okay, there. But since we are deriving the average variable cost, we're into average variable cost could be derived by total variable cost divided by your output. So in that case, we have to determine first your total variable cost. Okay, so in this case, look at the formula on this one. Uh, you have to write your base formula. Total cost is already 45,000. Total fixed cost, that is already on the table, which is the 20,000. And you are looking for the value of the total variable cost. Transpose to the other side, and now you have your total variable cost. Now, it's easy already to derive your average variable cost. Why? Because average variable cost now could just be derived by total variable cost divided by your output. Okay, on the other hand, how much is the marginal cost if we are going to produce at 200? Now, we all know that in terms of deriving marginal cost, we have to be involved with two variables. Okay, but in the problem, it is only stated at the 200. So that means there must be an estimation. We are going to estimate the marginal cost of this output. So if you're going to what do you call this one? If you're going to solve for the marginal cost of this one, you have to make an assumption na from between 100 papunta sa 200 at between 300 papunta sa 200. So that is in here. From quantity 100 to 200, marginal cost is change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. So 45 minus 35 divided by 200 minus 100. So we have 100 here. From 300 going to 200. So 53,000 minus 45,000 divided by 300 minus 200. So we have the 80 here. Next is add both this one, add them, and then divide it by 2. And you will have your 90 as the estimated marginal cost of the 200 units of output. Okay, so that's how you derive, or that's how you all actually solve for the marginal costs. Okay, so that is simply the end of this discussion, which was actually being used for the virtual class that we have. Thank you, and hope that you're going to view more the different PowerPoint audio presentation for this as just an aid for you to have a grasp on what the topic is all about. Thank you, and see you on the next virtual discussion.